Hello guys, this is Adit. Welcome to my channel Movement Science, where I simplify biomechanics with Joe. So if you're new to this channel, consider subscribing. Also check me out on Instagram, where I post pictures of my notes and also put out some daily MCQs. The reference time for all the topics that I'm going to cover will be mentioned down in the description, so check that out and let's get started. In this video, we are going to talk about the vertebral structure and its function. So first we'll start by getting familiar to the spine. We'll see what are primary and secondary curvatures, and then we will look at the structure of the vertebra, and then we'll also look at the function of the components that it has. Okay, so let's start with the topic. So starting with the spine, that is also called as a vertebral column, it has 33 vertebrae and 23 intervertebral disc. Now discs are spongy material which are found between the two vertebrae, which we will talk about in the next video. Okay, so don't worry about that. Let's look at the vertebrae first. So there are cervical, thoracic, lumbar, sacral and coccygeal vertebrae, as you can see over here on the spine. There are 7 cervical vertebrae, 12 thoracic, so that gives you 19. Then there are 5 lumbar vertebrae, that will give you 24. Then 5 sacral vertebrae, that will give you 29, and then coccygeal 4, that will give you total of 33 vertebrae, right? So the size of the vertebrae, it increases from cervical to your lumbar. Okay, so size will increase. We will see each of the vertebrae later. And then also the sacral to coccyx, the size again reduces. Now there is something called as the primary curvature and a secondary curvature in the spine. When you are born, your spine is totally kyphotic. Now what do I mean by kyphotic? A kyphotic curvature is basically when your posterior part, that is the back side of you, is convex, whereas the anterior part is concave. Okay, so that is a kyphotic curve. So when you are born, your whole spine is in a kyphotic curve, and then as you start developing and raising your head, you develop a cervical lordosis. And also as you start standing, you also develop a lordosis at the lumbar spine. Okay, so primary curvatures are the original kyphotic curvatures that are maintained at the spine. And where are these maintained? They are maintained at the thoracic spine, as you can see over here, and also over here, right, the sacral part. So primary curvature are original kyphotic curvatures that are maintained by thoracic and sacral region. Okay, whereas the secondary curvature are lordotic curvature, which has formed eventually while development at lumbar and cervical spine. So as you can see, cervical spine and lumbar spine has a opposite side curve, right? See, this one is kyphotic curve like this, where it's concave anteriorly and convex posteriorly, whereas the cervical lordosis is opposite, that is, it is convex anteriorly and concave posteriorly, and same with the lumbar spine. So now that we are comfortable with the spine, let us move on to the vertebral body. Okay, so starting with vertebra, there is the body, and then the posterior part is the neural arch, which has pedicle and other posterior elements. Okay, so first we'll start with the body. Now vertebral body is a block of trabecular bone which is covered by cancellous bone. Now trabecular bone is the hollow bone that we saw, right, which is good at absorbing forces, and the cancellous bone is the hard bone. So it is inside, it is hollow, and then outside there is a cancellous bone which gives it a hardness. Okay, so this trabecular bone resists compressive forces because these trabeculae, they are arranged vertically, right? So the forces are coming from top, and these forces are nicely absorbed by your body. So let's look at that. So this is our vertebra. Okay, and this is the body that you can see over here. This is the pedicle and this is the posterior part, that is the neural arch and all. We'll look at all the components one by one. So for now, this is the body. Okay, and it has the cancellous bone and trabecular bone. The trabecular bone helps in absorption of the forces because it's arranged in top to down direction. Hence the compressive forces that are put on the vertebral body are nicely absorbed. Next is the pedicle. This pedicle basically joins your posterior elements to your body. So if you see, it connects the body to the posterior elements. It is very short and it has a thick wall. right? So hence it is nicely designed to transmit the bending forces. So if you see, so all the muscles are attached on the posterior part of the spine, okay, to the spinous process, to the transverse process. So there is a lot of force on this part of the spine, and these forces should be nicely transmitted to the body so that it is taken down nicely, okay. So this function of transmission of forces, the transmission of the bending forces from the posterior elements, these are the posterior elements, to the vertebral body is done by your pedicle, right? So if you see over here also, this is the internal architecture of the vertebra. So this is how your trabeculae are arranged, and this is how the forces are transmitted. So if I keep the body over here, all the forces that are being put on your spinous process and the other processes, it's going to the body through these trabeculae and through this pedicle, okay. That's the part which joins the body to the posterior elements. So that is the function of your pedicle. Now going to the next part, the articular processes. Now this is one of the most important part. So articular processes is where your one vertebra articulates with the other one. So that's where the actual joint is. So how do I show you this? So there are two superior facets and two inferior facets. Let me show you those first, okay. So this is your vertebra, right? So if you can see these two blue parts, these are the superior facets, and two red over here below, these are the inferior facets, okay. So these are your facets, and these superior facets, they will articulate with the inferior facets of the next vertebra. So if I take the next vertebra over here, this vertebra's inferior facets, which are over here, will articulate with the superior facets of the vertebra below it. So this is how the articulation happens, and there will be disc between these two vertebrae, so don't miss that. So this is how the articulation occurs at the spine, that is through facet joints. Now these articular processes, they form a supportive column, and this column is called as the articular pillar. Basically, as they keep articulating one on top of the another and they keep stacking, it forms a pillar through which the forces are nicely transmitted, right? So that is called as your articular pillar. Moving on to the next part, that is the spinous process. Spinous process is the last part of your vertebra. So this is your body, pedicle. Then there are other structures that we will discuss soon. And this last part, the posterior projecting part, is your spinous process. So posterior projection arising from the lamina, dividing into two, sometimes it divides into two, is called as your spinous process. So this is your lamina. I'll show you lamina in some time. It will be more clearer. So what it does is it provides an attachment for your muscles. So muscle attachment over here, and it helps in increasing the moment arm. Now moment arm topic I haven't made a video on. I'll soon make the video on moment arm too. But basically what it says is, basically if the muscle was attached to your body somewhere over here, and if muscle was pulling the body, see, the movement would be happening, but lot of force would have to be applied through the muscle for the movement to occur. But if you just pull the vertebra through spinous process, there is higher moment arm that is available, right? So this is how your spinous process helps in increasing the moment arm and increases the efficiency at the spine. It also serves as a bony block. So when you are going into extension, this bony block will be present, which will prevent excessive movement at the spine. Okay, so these are the two functions of the spinous process. Again, so what did we see? We saw this is the vertebral body, then we saw the pedicle, okay, then we saw the articulating surfaces, right? These are the superior articulating surface which articulated with the inferior ones like this over here, and the inferior ones over here will be articulating with the superior ones of the next vertebra. So this is how it keeps articulating on top of the another, inferior with the superior, inferior with the superior of the other one, right? Then we saw the spinous process over here, and also we saw the internal architecture. Now let us look at some of the more components. So going ahead, there is the vertebral foramen. So if you see, this is the foramen that you can see, which is present between the body and the posterior elements. And what does it do? It forms a passage and protects the spinal cord which is passing through it, right? And this foramen that you see is formed by your lamina also. So lamina is present at the central portion of the arch and posterior to the pedicle. So this is your pedicle, right, which joins the body to the posterior elements, and from the pedicle to the spinous process, whatever content we have in between, that is your lamina. which helps in forming the canal. Okay, so that is your lamina. If you can see over here, this orange part is your lamina, green part was your pedicle, this is your body, this is the foramen, this is the spinous process, and these are the transverse process which go outward transversely, right? So transverse process, spinous process. The other part which is there between is the pedicle, which also consists the articulating surfaces, right? And then your pedicle and the body. Okay, so I hope you are clear with the structure of the vertebra now. So this lamina, what it does is it transmits forces from the articular, that is the articular surfaces over here, right? These are the articular surfaces. Through them there is force transmission, right? Because they are articulating with the another bone, another vertebra. So those forces are coming to the lamina through these articulating surfaces. So it transmits the forces from the articulating processes, then also through the transverse and spinous process. So these are the transverse process and the spinous process. So through them also the forces are coming, and it transfers these forces to the pedicle. Okay, so from here, here and here, all the forces are coming to the lamina, and from the lamina these forces are being transmitted to the pedicle, through which it goes to the body, right? So this is how the force transmission occurs in the vertebra. So that is the job of your lamina. Okay, so now this lamina has a part called as pars interarticularis, which is a portion of lamina between the superior and the inferior articulating processes. So as you can see, this is the superior articulating surface and the inferior articulating surface, and between them, so between this and this, I hope you can see it, this part is called as the pars interarticularis, and this part is subjected to lot of bending forces which are transmitted through it. Okay, through the lamina it goes to the pedicle, right? All these forces, so it is subjected to lot of bending forces, and these have high risk of stress fracture. Okay, so this is very important part, that they are very much prone to stress fractures. Okay, now going to the next part, that is the transverse process. Now these are the transverse process over here, and what they do is they have lateral projection. So from the body they are projected laterally, and again they have also muscle attachment. So similar to spinous process, they increase the moment arm. Okay, so these transverse processes, they increase the moment arm and help in more efficient movement at the spine. So with that we finish off this topic. What did we see? We first saw the vertebral column. There are 33 vertebrae, how they are divided. We saw what is primary curve, which is the curve that is maintained from your birth, that is a kyphotic curve at the thoracic and the sacral region, whereas the secondary curve is formed later as you develop, where there is lordosis at the cervical spine and the lumbar spine, right? Then we saw the structure of the vertebra. We saw the body, then the pedicle, transverse process, spinous process, canal, and your lamina. Lamina also had the pars interarticularis, which has high chances of stress fracture because of lot of bending forces, right? The transverse process and the spinous process, they help in increasing the moment arm through muscle attachment. Lamina helps in transmission of forces. Vertebral foramen, it protects your spinal cord. And then we had the vertebral body, which was taking up all the forces and transmitting it downward. Pedicle was the one which was linking the posterior elements to the body, so that was the force transmission zone. Then the articular processes, the superior was articulating with the inferior one of the other vertebra like this, and they just keep stacking one on the other. And then we already covered the spinous process here. And then internal architecture, how these force distribution occur at the vertebra through the trabecular bone, right? So if you can see here nicely how the trabecular bones are, they are basically hollow from inside, and the force transmission happens really well in them, right? So with that we finish off vertebral structure and function. In next video I will be talking about the intervertebral discs. So that's all for today guys. Thank you for watching. If you like my video, please share it with your friends. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and also like the video, as it really helps me out. Also let me know in the comment section what other videos you would like me to cover. And see you soon in the next video.